So a student sent me this question, and just wondering how to set up the null and the alternate hypothesis. And this one's tough. You kind of read it out of the problem, and it's not obvious. Suppose a mutual fund qualifies as having moderate risk if the standard deviation of its monthly rate is less than 5%. A mutual fund rating agency randomly selects 29 months and determines that the rate of return for a certain fund. The standard deviation of the rate of return is computed to be 3.73. So already, funds and standard deviation and these numbers are kind of swimming in your head. But here is the hypothesis framework that we're going to pursue. So this next question really gets it. Is there sufficient evidence to conclude that the fund has a moderate risk at a significance of 10%? Okay. So that's the hypothesis framework. So it doesn't really say that the researcher assumes that something is true, which is kind of like the normal tip-off of what the normal tip-off of what the null hypothesis is. So we select the standard deviation. It is clear that we're talking about standard deviations here, right? Because everything in the problem has been a standard deviation. But we want to see if there's sufficient evidence to conclude that the fund has a moderate risk. And remember, a moderate risk, if up here, is defined as if the standard deviation is less than 5%. So that's kind of our alternate hypothesis, is that we assume that it's not moderate, but we want to see if it's less than 5%. Okay. So usually the null hypothesis is the easy one to see, but in this problem, actually the alternate hypothesis is the easy one to see. Here, the null hypothesis is that it's not, right? So we're either going to reject the null hypothesis or not. And so think about what would not be moderate. Well, anything that's 5% or more is moderate. So we're going to say the null hypothesis is that it's moderate, the lowest possible moderate value for an immoderate mutual fund, right? Immoderate risk. So I'm going to let the standard deviation be equal to 5%. Is it likely, given that the standard deviation is 5%, that I would get this sample of 29 months and having a standard deviation at 3.73%, and so, which is less than 0.5. But does that mean is it significantly less at a 10% level of significance? That's what we want to see. So from here on out, obviously, you just go to StatCrunch and use the variance calculator. But that's how you set up the null and the alternate hypothesis here. This one's tricky.